We are super excited to bring you this bonus episode showcasing 7 speakers in 7 days.
This episode is a partnership between the Data in Education and Building a Culture of Collaboration podcasts, with episodes being released through each podcast.
The bonus series showcases speakers who will be presenting at the June 2025 Data and Education Virtual Summit happening June 10th and 11th. We encourage you to search Data and Education Summit June 2025 to learn more and register. You can also check out the show notes for additional links.
So, Jess, we're excited to dive into this episode, so let's get started.
Welcome, educators. Whether you are a spreadsheet, dashboard, all things data fanatic like myself, or you break out into a cold sweat just hearing the words data meeting, it's okay. I've got you. My name is Jessica Lane, and I'm your host for this podcast, Data and Education. I'm also the founder of Data Informed Impact, where I work with schools and educators all over to get rid of some of that overwhelm and make things a little bit easier for them to make the best decisions for their students. We'll be talking about all things data culture, data literacy, and data visualization. Let's get started.
Welcome. We are Lorna and Curtis Hewson, hosts of the Building a Culture of Collaboration podcast.
And I'm Jessica Lane, host of the Data and Education podcast. In today's bonus episode, we have Emily Mulcahey, an instructional coach from North College Hill City Schools with 29 years in the education trenches. Emily's seen how bringing teachers together around data, not just handing it to them, sparks incredible student growth. She's living proof that collaboration makes data less scary and way more impactful. She's also living proof that I am a real human because Emily and I have worked together for several years at my latest job at North College Hill, and she's one of my best friends. So welcome, Emily.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We are
Okay,
happy
so-
to have you.
Emily, since Jessica knows everything there is to know about Emily,
Yeah.
we need to ask the questions around. Give us a little bit of your background in education. What's brought you to the point where you are today?
Okay, well, like Jess said, I've been in education for 29 years, all of them in North College Hill here in Cincinnati, which is a bit unique. We know that a lot of people, move around these days, but it has not been that way for me. I started with my first job in North College Hill. I got it 3 days before school started, way back in a long time ago, and was teaching sixth grade. At the time, sixth grade was self-contained, but there was a teacher on the team who wanted to teach as much math as possible, and I am not typically someone at the time who enjoyed math, so I absolutely traded off and taught his science while he taught my math. And so I had 2 bells of science and I taught everything else. That included art because we didn't have an art teacher for sixth grade at that time. And also occasionally included gym and things like that. So over the course of my career, that was only 2 years there. And then sixth grade moved back to elementary buildings. Still self-contained, spent the majority of my time as a language arts teacher. But during the course of my career, I have taught everything. I've done a little bit of everything. But the majority of that time was spent in sixth grade language arts. And so 8 years ago, my principal at the time was transitioning to a job as the teaching and learning coordinator and kind of said to me, hey, I think you'd be a really good coach. And I was like, I don't think I really want to leave the classroom. I was one of those that, knew I wanted to teach. My mom said I started talking about it in the 4th grade. And so I imagined myself retiring from the classroom rather than doing anything else. And she was like, I just really think you should try it. If you don't like it, you can always transition back. And I haven't looked back. I love it. I love being able to work with the teachers and being able to provide support, things that I wish I had, when I was in the classroom, the ability for somebody to find resources or be an idea to bounce, or a person to bounce ideas off of. So, have really enjoyed this role, and it has shifted even in the 8 years that I've been doing it. Changed what what our model has been a couple of different times. So, really, that's kind of my journey and where I'm at. So,
Awesome.
It's so
Okay.
crazy how everyone's journey just kind of evolves, and that you thought that you started out as a classroom teacher and that you would always be a classroom
yeah.
teacher. That's me too. And And yeah, life doesn't end up that way.
I taught at the post-secondary level and with pre-service teachers and would love when you'd have the, oh, what are you thinking as you graduate, whatnot? And the person will go, I'm going to teach grade 4 science. And you go,
Good luck.
good luck. I'm
Um,
sure that'll be great. Okay. I'm
I was just
also
gonna say I'm one of those that, I've been lucky I really loved 6th grade, and it's not a grade that in pre-service I would have thought I wanted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was what I did my student teaching in, and you just kind of fell in love with them. So I've been lucky throughout all the years to be able to stay at that age level.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
so
awesome.
when you say that you've taught pretty much everything, I would love to know which was the grade level or subject area that stretched you the most.
Cool. It was either teaching the arts, because I am not I don't like draw well. I feel like I'm a creative person, but like drawing is not a strength of mine. So that was definitely one that was a challenge. And then honestly, math. I don't care for it. I can do it, but it was being able to explain it in a way that other people would understand was more a challenge for me, because I knew I understood it, but I couldn't necessarily tell you why I understood it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a whole separate podcast, probably.
We can
Yeah.
dive deep into
We can go deep into that.
Emily's transformation. She is now a strong believer that everyone is a math person.
I am.
So
I am. I am.
Well,
over to the dark side.
nice. The reason I have to ask that is I had a chance to teach just about every grade level, every subject area. And for me, it was kindergarten phys ed. Hats off to anyone that's teaching kindergarten in any way, but phys ed is just at
Little
an
scary.
I'm
entirely
sure. I did.
different
you-
level.
I did a
I
kindergarten,
can imagine.
kindergarten experience in college where I was there 45 minutes once a week for only
Yeah.
6 weeks. And by the end of those 45 minutes, I was like, this is not for, like, I should not be laying the foundation. That was it.
So hooray and hats off to all those kindergarten teachers.
Yeah, I was
out
going to
there.
say
Definitely.
Amazing work.
special pedestal in teaching Hall of Fame for everyone that endures that on a daily basis. So again, Jessica said that she's pulled you over to the dark side. And, anytime that we mention data or numbers, Jess, you can see the little grin
she
go
grins.
up on her face. Yeah. How about for you? When we talk about data, is that something that used to make you cringe and now not, or you've always been a fan, or I'm still not a fan, I just pretend for Jessica's sake? Like, where would you put yourself?
No, I think I've sort of always been a fan, not necessarily so much of the numbers, but of the understanding that data gives us. And I started, thinking in some of the preparation for this and for the presentations in June about my own data journey. And I remember actually going back to my student teaching. And it was math that I was teaching at the time. And I remember that I had created these, this is back when we had like paper worksheets, there wasn't anything online. And so I had created these different worksheets with, some addition and some subtraction and multiplication and division, and divided all of the students in the class based upon their results of that, so that we could, practice, remediate, whatever. And so it's funny because I hadn't thought about that story for a long time, or that experience, but that transitioned then into my own teaching. And when I was teaching language arts, we have the Ohio tests in reading that we have every year. And we would give practice assessments multiple times a year to just sort of checkpoints with where they are. And I would use those very specifically based upon and where they were, and, what do we need to work on? And, oh, wow, looks like everybody doesn't get, main idea or fact and opinion. So we know we need to do some work on that, and then creating groups off of that. So I feel like I always understood the importance of data, not necessarily, again, the numbers and having to calculate all that. Definitely not my favorite piece of it, but I understood where it came from and why it was important. And being able to see the gains from point A to point B when you do it that way.
Mhm. So, Emily, with your extensive experience and background from the classroom to coaching, how have you seen effective collaboration among educators impact the way data is used to support student learning?
So I think the biggest piece there is that, when people are talking about it, we created teams in North College Hill. We're very small. So I was the only sixth grade language arts teacher in our district. So our teams were more content based. So we had fifth grade through eighth grade teachers of language arts. So we would all try it. We've gone through several iterations of this as well. But at the time, we were all giving, for example, we were all working on whatever the fact and opinion standard-ish was, standard. And we would all give our assessments and then be able to come back and talk about, like, I tried to do this and it just really didn't work. And then somebody else could go, well, when I teach fact and opinion, I've always tried this and they seem to get it this way. So like those conversations, I think, are almost, I don't know if I'd say more important, but just as important as what the student data is saying. But the idea that we all are coming together to say, okay, something's not working. What could we do? And so that's where I feel like the collaboration piece is, because a lot of us get data and look at the data and go, oh, wow, that didn't work. And if you don't have that piece to come back to someone, whether it's a coach or a colleague or a team, then you're just sort of looking at this data and feeling bad about yourself because it didn't work. So the collaboration piece opens up ideas for how people can improve instruction, and I don't want to say I hate to use the word improve, but like just change instruction.
Yeah. Build upon it.
Because that's one of the things I think is that, having conversations about data and data culture, there's got to be a lot of grace for people to be able to say, like, this, just having bad data doesn't mean that I'm a bad teacher. It just means that what I tried didn't work. And so what can I try differently this time? And there were plenty of times where my data was not great. And so having to learn how to not take that as the takeaway, but what can I do that's gonna improve outcomes?
I just want to say that I did not pay her or even tell her to mention collaboration. That was authentic. And so Curtis and Lorna, that's like their big thing that they work with. It's collaboration, collaborative response. So, so it was totally natural. That's how well we know that the idea of collaboration and being data informed go so hand in hand. We've talked about before. Yeah,
definitely.
Well, and to me, what's key, and you mentioned it there, Emily, of if we have this data and then each of us goes back and sits in our classroom and perseverates on it,
right.
I might even be able to see, here's the gaps that I'm seeing, and I think I know where to go next. But there's lots of times where I'm going, okay, I've done what I know how to do. Like, I haven't held back my best instructional practices for round 2. But if I knew what to do to get better results, I would have done it already.
Yeah.
So that collaboration comes huge.
Well, and it becomes a great opportunity for people coming together to even look at calibrating, right?
Yeah.
So you're calibrating your data that's coming in to be able to see, what are our commonalities and how do we help each other in improving in those particular areas of instruction. And that becomes exciting and powerful conversation.
Jess, you said before too, the data should start a conversation, not end it.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So I'm pretty sure I know all the answers to all these questions based on the millions of conversations that we've had. I would say that most of my work that I do now, the foundation of it is in the conversations that I've had with the people I work closely with over the past several years. But coming from your perspective and your role as an instructional coach, how do you foster a collaborative environment that actually encourages the teachers, especially those that are initially hesitant to engage with that data meaningfully?
So I think, again, the first piece is sort of taking away the stigma of bad data, and you can do that multiple ways. You can do that with generic data where names have been removed, so it's not clear, not clear who it belongs to, and just, and start with the what do you wonder, what do you notice kind of conversations about it. That when you're doing that, rather than going, oh my gosh, look at this data, we're only 20% of the class passed. What the heck happened? I feel like that coming at it from that perspective really shifts people's thought processes and mindsets about it. So, being able to have those conversations about like, we're not here to say good, bad. We're here to say worked,
Mm-mm.
didn't work. And so what can we do? And, then let's have some conversation, like, because I feel like anyone who's been in education for any stretch of time knows that, like you said, you're not saving your great teaching for some other moment. You've done what
Yeah.
you think is going to work, and one year it works, and the next year it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It worked for 5 years, and now this year it's not working. And then if I
Or
try,
it worked last week and this
And
week
now not
not so
hard.
much.
Right.
so exactly. So so just that understanding that it's not that I am a bad teacher. It's that this didn't work. And so what do I need to do? What are my options for doing something different? And like you said, it's very difficult when you're in your own little lane. So, starting with data that is, again, either generic or not as, scary in terms of me being judged for what is on this paper. Because, the district, when we started this process, was an improvement. And so we were putting numbers on these pages of how many kids passed and how many kids didn't. And you were putting it on a chart with everybody else's. And so there was a lot of pressure with that.
Yeah.
And there is very definitely something, like you said, to be said about calibrating where we are and where my class stands with the other classes. But, if it can be done in a way where it's not, uh, you're terrible at what you're doing, and instead it's okay, this one didn't work, so how can we shift? Is there something different you can try? I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah. And being able to remove that judgment piece that we sometimes actually relate
Yeah.
to the conversations around data.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Well, and I think if people feel that, then it instantly turns into, well, the tool's not an effective
Yeah.
tool. Well, it's not measuring
they
what I'm
use it.
teaching,
Or
right?
or the kids, they weren't paying. I mean, there's, then up when you move into all of those, like, well, I tried, but this works with, where you were, but this doesn't work here, like those kind of conversations, too. So,
Well,
I
and it's
think some of that and opening people up to like, okay, well, are you willing to try? Like, this one didn't work, so could we try something different, kind of thing.
yeah. Well, and
then-
Remove
keeping it in
judgment.
our locus of control to say, okay, yeah, all those other things. Again, no one's getting judged, or we're trying to remove that judgment and evaluation to just, all right, what do you notice and what do you see and what could we do about it?
Yes,
Well, it's about our response, right? In the end, it's how do we respond to it?
exactly.
I have a quick side question to ask you, Emily, because I've referenced this a couple times with Curtis and Lorna, and I reference it very often, the meeting that I had about iReady data my first year, where I stood up at the board and jotted down all the things that wasn't shown in the data. I'm curious if you were in that meeting. I can't remember.
It sounds familiar. You may have to remind me of the outcome.
It was the one where I had them all stand up and raise their right hand and promise not to judge the data. If I remember,
Alex was there.
It was hilarious. Lots of fun, but also a lot of good conversation. So
Definitely.
So, Jess, there's a question that you had prepped in the show notes about that specific instance when a teacher became a data champion. I'm assuming that there's a bit of a understanding behind that. Can we turn it over to you?
oh, about this person that she's talking about, or the person that I was talking about?
Yeah.
So I have to read the notes here and catch up. I don't
It's
know if I know who
mentioning-
you're talking about.
Yeah, it's mentioning that idea of an instance.
Oh, yes, I know. I know
Yeah.
the story.
You know,
yeah.
It's honestly not my story personally. It was one that I was just sort of peripherally a part of, but I feel like
Yeah.
so it's more Jess's story than my story even.
Oh, I would say that it's just as much either of our stories. It was more just there was a person who was, when we started rolling out the whole system for collecting progress monitoring data, she and when we're telling this story, she's given us full permission. I have video of her telling this story. So just so everyone knows, we're not over here talking about someone.
yet.
Someone's listening to this going, I can't believe I'm
No, she's very open about it. But she's been a teacher for a long time. She's experienced. She's one of those teachers that's just like, I do it this way. It works. I don't need to do anything else. And And so at first, when we asked her to start progress monitoring on the spreadsheet that I had created and everything, she was like, no, I don't think I need to do that. And it was voluntary at first. We started very small. That was one of the things that worked very well with that district. Is that we did a very slow and methodical rollout. And so she was given the opportunity to witness other people bringing their data to these meetings. And she said it would come around to her, and so they would ask her about her students, and she would say, "Oh, yeah, I feel like they're doing good," or "They took a test last week and they got an A, I guess." Uh, or they didn't do so well, but I can't really figure out why. And through more of those conversations, she realized that having that data was allowing those other teachers to drill down to specifically what those students needed. And so she still was a little bit hesitant. She started working through it, and she was 100% like all in after she started being able to see that data. She is a strong proponent of the whole MTSS, the systems and the culture that they have built there. Even to the point where she now sees a connection between the curriculum documents template that I've built for them and the reflection piece on that and how it connects back to the MTSS systems. And it's just to hear her saying that, like, she just came out one time at one of our district meetings. And she's like, listen, when I first did this, I was like, no, not going to do this. I hate it.
One more
And
group to jump
now,
through, one more,
yes, one more
yeah.
group to
Busy
jump
enough
through.
already.
Heard that.
Right. And she's an honest person. Like, she will tell you if she doesn't believe in something. And like, I almost started crying hearing her talk about it. She was like, no, it's right. We're doing the right thing. And that was even before they found out that they moved out of improvement status. So she knew.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a really, again, being around as long as I had and having people talk about these things. Like I said, we've been recording data on sheets for years and years and years. And so this little shift of, okay, well, let's look at this and be able to drill down to what the real issue might be.
Right.
And hearing her, who become a supporter of it, by seeing it happen was just, yeah, it was great.
This totally reminds me of a conversation with a system leader, and he had shared this out with all of his teaching staff. The idea that, well, we don't have time to gather assessment data. And he had said, if we do this well, we are going to reduce the amount of time. Think of how much
Yep.
time you spend
Yeah.
trying to figure out and throwing darts at a board and hoping you hit it. What if we gave you the target that
Yeah.
you were looking at right away? How much time would you save if we did that really well? Which points to this exactly.
Yes, exactly.
So then, Emily, from your perspective, what are some of the collaborative practices that you've seen that have been developed through the examination of data or have been critical when you're thinking about people-driven data culture in a school or a district?
I think that it kind of goes back to a couple things that I said earlier, that that destigmatizing the way that you're looking at data, and making it the mindset that the whole purpose is to collaborate, improve, that we're all in this together. They're all our kids. How can we make it better? Is definitely a piece of that. The rest of it is definitely a certain level of trust within teams that has to happen for
Mhm.
people to be willing to do that. And so
Yeah.
Yeah,
continuing to
that's
make
for
sure that your district, your organization, whatever it is, has built that culture of nobody's gonna, everybody's supportive of each other. And that, again, every teacher just being willing to admit that you might not have the answer this time, that it might not be working, and what do you do? And so I think, looking at those and then having a built system, a very specific way of looking at it and discussing it, that if you're doing that the same way each time, that's going to build you towards, like you said, more effective practices. One of the pieces of our system that we have is that when we have these meetings every 6 weeks to discuss the data, there's a Google form that is meant to just keep you on track. Because how many times have you been in a meeting where you're talking about student data and then you go off on this tangent about X, Y, and Z, and now you've
Yeah.
spent 20 of the minutes that you only have 30 to talk about all these kids and you don't have the time. So,
That
some
I'm sorry, but that must be a US phenomena. That doesn't happen in Canada.
I don't.
I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
wow.
All the time.
Right.
Wow. Okay. Well, then maybe the U.S. audience will understand what I'm talking about.
But
But
the funny thing about that is that that's what we teach is structures and
Oh, structures,
processes
processes.
through
Yeah.
our collaborative practices.
definitely, I think that has been again one of the game changers that, and it helped because then you don't spend quite as much time sort of griping about the problem or the data. You're really
Yeah.
focused on being solution oriented with the system that we adopt. So
Something
know,
that
th-
sorry,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say something that that's actually come to mind when thinking about that because I always preach use a Google form as a script, use a Google form, and I know we've seen a ton of success with that, and I've worked with other schools. I've seen a ton of success with that as well, and I'm like, it took me a while because it's very conflicting with my view of like the least amount of clicks, the most efficient. You would think that typing it on a sheet or typing it in a Word document would be faster than a Google form. But I think it's that a Google form has a submit button that you have to click to wrap things up. That just makes it like in your brain, there's a finishing spot and you have to
Yeah.
get there. I think that has a lot to do with the success that we've seen with using the Google Forms for our meetings.
The other thing that we've found too is when you're thinking about structures and systems and whatnot, our initial pushback as professionals is, oh, are you kidding me? Like, we're professionals. Just let us talk. And our finding has been whenever you can put structure to this, the people who went, are you kidding me? We have to do this might take one or two times through, who eventually get to the, oh my goodness, the structure helped us do in 20 minutes what used to take us 50.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
looking at data on 30 or 40 kids and having a 30 or 40-minute meeting, or an hour-long meeting even
Yeah.
to try and get through that, they weren't getting through their data the way that we were hoping,
Yeah.
or through the problem-solving piece of it. And so, being able to have that structure to just move things along, they're like, oh my gosh, we got through 50 kids in an hour,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
more, or an hour or less. So that's a big piece.
Yeah, and it also, I feel like helps that facilitator guide the discussion. It gives them something very specific to say, like, are we finished with this question? Is it time to move on to that next question? So I feel like I see a lot more success in the facilitation of like teachers when they are working off of a Google script as opposed to just some kind of sheet or Word doc.
Yeah.
Or worse than that, I've given you 40 minutes. Go analyze your data and let
Yeah.
us know what you find out.
Just totally open-ended.
Just go do data.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah.
I gave them the data and they don't want to even look at it. I don't know if that's
But I want to kind of we've mentioned a little bit about the success that we've seen at North College Hill, especially in the elementary school, and that's what you are presenting on as well for the upcoming summit, all about progress monitoring, academic interventions. And this is a presentation that we've given together multiple times. Every time we give this presentation, people are like, "Oh my goodness, tell me everything." It's my favorite presentation to give, but I am handing it over to you this time. And not that I'm hesitant about that at all, because you know every little detail about this. I want you to talk through a little bit about what that session, what you're going to go over in that session.
Okay. So it's about our the process and the system that we put into place at the elementary to progress monitor our academic interventions. And we're going to talk about, what steps brought us to that. Where did it start from? Why did we need this? And then we're going to move in from there into the steps that we took to implement, and how we went step by step, how we went slowly, like some of those things that I think sometimes get lost in the weeds. Like people hear about something and go, oh yeah, we should do that. So we're going to go into the steps that we took to really prepare and get it so that we had the most chance of being successful. and then going through the process itself, and each of the individual steps. And then from there, we'll sort of wrap up with some of our best suggestions and some sample schedules and sample, sample documents and things like that that people will be able to look at and take and modify, because that's the other big piece of it, is that what works for one might not work exactly the same way for someone else.
Yeah.
So, what can you do to take this and make it work for wherever you are. So really about a celebration of, the starting slow, like we said, those people who were not really sure they wanted to do it, and then moving into a really successful system that has allowed the building to move out of school improvement, and that's huge. Those outcomes for kids, and how they are now in a better position moving into the middle school, and then moving into wherever they go next, kind of piece, and how that is going to continue to grow the district, as well. So it's a fun presentation.
That's
Um,
exciting.
yeah, and I do want to mention two things. I want to drop in a little gold nugget that North College Hill is also the first school in Ohio to go to 4-day weeks for the students. So the Mondays are, and they started that last school year. The Mondays are dedicated to no more than half a day in meetings, and the second half day for just teacher planning time, which was really nice. And when I'm saying that, to say that even going down, even shortening us down to 4 days a week, they were still able to be pulled out of improvement status. So it's baffling to think about, trying all these different things and really committing to it, because like we didn't know that all of these systems and procedures for NTSS were going to work perfectly for our school. We just dove in and stayed committed and continued to be flexible, but we were committed to the vision. And same thing with the 4 days a week, and both have brought a lot of progress. And we talked about the academic progress, but I do also want to give you a chance to touch on anything outside of the academic outcomes, such as like the overall well-being and the confidence of the students and teachers, and how the work with data has had an effect on that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most exciting things about the meetings that they have when they're talking about their data, and looking at a student who's been in an intervention, and if they should move, do they get to exit tier 2 and go back to tier 1, or if they're making progress, and hearing the teachers tell the individual stories about the students who are, I'm noticing this in class, and in our group, they're really rocking this. And then the teacher who has them for a different subject is like, I'm noticing that they're interacting more and they're talking more. And so it definitely, we all know that when you're doing well, and it builds your confidence. And so it definitely is building student confidence. The teachers, again, your students are doing well, you feel like you're doing well. And so,
Yeah.
so it's building that as well. And I think, again, just having those teams be able to have that dedicated time to come together and have those conversations has really built that, that trust, and that feeling like they all know they're all in the same situation. There could be some days where you're talking about 6 kids that you are individually working with, and there'll be other weeks where you're talking only about 2 kids and somebody else is talking about 6 kids. So like just that, that feeling of, we're here, we're working together. It really does. It makes a huge difference for, feeling like you're making progress. So you're more willing, you want to come, you like coming to work, because that kid is so close to, reaching that goal, and seeing them progress as well. So
It touches on the collective efficacy for sure,
100.
which is nice. And I can back it up with the data, which is that out of the 4 schools in the district, that school had the least amount of teacher turnover over the past several years. So yeah, and by far too, like we know that there's a teacher shortage right now. We know that teachers are leaving everywhere. Those teachers are sticking around. So it just goes to show how much they are really dedicated to the mission of serving their students.
definitely.
Mhm. So, Emily, this has been a great conversation, and we love to be able to share how our listeners can get in touch with you.
Probably the easiest way. I'm not the most connected on all of the socials and things like that. So the easiest way would be to use my work email, which is my last name, Mulcahey, Mulcahey.e nchcityschools.org. And I know that's on several places. You guys will probably post it and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
we'll post it up in the show notes.
That's really the easiest way to get in touch with me. I work on a teacher schedule, but I get my email all year on my phone. So I absolutely am happy. And like I said, I'm passionate about helping teachers, and I feel like this is something that helps them. So I'm happy to talk to anybody, in further detail that that would want to have further conversation.
Awesome.
Well, Emily, this has been an absolute pleasure to get to know you. And I assume, Jess, to be able to once again reconnect and
Yes.
to take what I'm sure has been several in classrooms, in coffee shops, over the phone conversations, and bring it to a public
At
space.
homes late at night with a glass of wine.
Yeah,
Exactly. All of these things. I
No doubt.
definitely enjoyed it. It was nice to meet you guys as well.
Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too. Take care, Emily.
Okay, you too.
Okay, so you had raved about Emily before we had a chance to meet her, and I get it. That's awesome. And you may notice, for anyone who's watching now, Lorna has departed. She's off meeting with a school here now, but it gives us a chance to debrief some of the things heard. So, Jess, I know that none of the conversations that came through there is probably the first time you've ever talked about something with Emily, but what were some things that resonated for you in listening to her share the work that's happening at a school you're very familiar with?
Yeah, I mean, everything. And it's just I can't stop smiling because she's just one of my favorite people. And we're very different when it comes to a lot of these things and a lot of our viewpoints. Her background's all in elementary and ELA, mine was all in math. So the way that we were able to come together, and I say this too about our whole teaching and learning team, we had so many different perspectives. And for some reason, as a team, we were able to push each other and disagree, but then use it to kind of push us further and further. And it's just one of those teams that like you only have once in a lifetime. And it just warms my heart to be able to talk to her again and reminisce a little bit on all those conversations that we've had. I will also add that she mentioned that her principal at the time, who was then going into the district office, was the one who pushed her to be an instructional coach. And I just want to give a huge shout out to Michelle Garten, because that's who it was. That's also my boss, who then pushed me to start working with other schools. So she's definitely one of those bosses that's like, I see this in you. You need to push yourself. You need to challenge yourself, get outside your comfort zone, because it's so important that you share what you have with other people. And so huge shout out, Michelle. We love you. But overall, yes, just a heartwarming conversation.
I absolutely loved what she said about bad data doesn't mean I'm a bad teacher. And I think
Right.
lots of us get to that place of, oh, we took a look at this and I expected my kids to do better. And
Mhm.
and we own it. It's a part of, well, it's a reflection of us. And to be able to say, no, you're a great teacher. You're an amazing teacher.
Right.
But right now, the data is saying this is a concept that the students aren't quite getting. So what could we do differently? And the great thing about teaching, and also the confusing and infuriating part at times, is what I do that works exceptionally well with a certain group of students or with certain types of students are not going to work with another. And rather than saying, well, that's a reflection on me as a bad teacher, it's just reflecting we have to look at something different way. And what could that be? What could we do?
Yeah, right. You never know. I mean, different generations bring different barriers and different things that you have to think about. And even if you look year to year, week to week, it's just, you never know what group of students you have, and you have to experiment a bit to be able to meet all of their needs, for sure.
So I would suggest anyone listening to this and are still around for the end of the podcast here, if you're at a place of, man, my teachers get really, maybe not defensive, but a little on edge looking at data. I loved what Emily suggested, and we actually did this within our school. I hadn't even thought about it until she mentioned it, that come in with no names on the data. And we did that. We said, all right, here's a set of data that's coming from a grade level, and we have no names, but we've got the numbers and the colors associated. And then we would walk through the process that we wanted to use in time, but just to get familiar with it of, okay, what are some areas of strength that you're seeing for this particular cohort of unnamed students? What are some gaps that you're seeing? What might be some next steps that you would take? And again, I love your question of, when you look at this, what information would we not know looking at this piece of data? But taking the names off and the identifiers off, just to walk through the process, I think is a really, really valuable way to go about an entry point for looking at data effectively.
Yeah, I agree. I agree for sure. And I do want to again point out that Emily is presenting at the summit and give you guys a time for that. That is going to be on our second day, June 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern. And again, she's going to be talking all about the progress monitoring academic interventions. Like I said, that presentation, everyone always loves it. We always have a million questions after. It just makes me so happy to be able to present that whole system and that transformation to other people. And I'm so excited to hand it off to Emily to do so this time.
That is awesome. Well, so looking forward to it. And for anyone that is wondering more about that summit, check out the show notes. Go search out Data and Education Summit. It's going to be an outstanding learning opportunity. And Jess, there are, with it being online, there is the option to be able to get replay
Yes,
available,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, we're talking about a lot of great sessions, and some of them are at the same time. So you definitely want that Line Plus replay ticket. Plus, you get a free copy of Curtis and Lorna's book, Collaborative Response. That is a physical book that gets sent to you in the mail, which is like super fun. I got mine. Now I'm excited to read it.
So Jess, also the question I know always comes up with this is, how long do they have access to those videos? What are you intending there?
So I keep them available for at least 6 months. I have no intention of making them go away anytime soon, but I promise 6 months at least.
Yeah, awesome. All right, with that, looking forward to continuing our series of 7 speakers in 7 days, all focused on how do we utilize data effectively in our organizations to lead for better outcomes for students. And as we talked about today, outcomes for staff and not just academic as well. Very excited.
Yeah, me too.
All right, take care. Wishing everyone the best.
Bye-bye.
Well, my friend, did you enjoy it? I'm really hoping the answer is yes. And like every other podcast out there, I'm going to ask you for some big favors. Can you please make sure that you're subscribed? You don't want to miss the next episode, I promise. And then if you could leave a review, that'd be awesome too. If you're on YouTube, by the way, there's this great thing that you can do where you just like go to the box underneath the video and type in your thoughts, ideas, wishes, hopes, dreams, and hit comment. And it shows up under the video. It is public, just a warning. But I'd really love for you to do that. Share with me. What did you think about the episode? Or what are your dreams in life? It's okay. You can really leave any kind of comment. And I'll do my best to respond. Above all else, I appreciate you listening, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.